June 20th, 2020 is World Refugee Day. What is World Refugee Day? World Refugee Day is observed every year on the 20th of June in order to raise public awareness about the conditions and the problems that refugees face in their lives throughout the world. This day provides an opportunity to show globally that we all stand with refugees. On December 4th, 2000, the United Nations General Assembly declared in Resolution 55/76 that World Refugee Day would be celebrated annually on the 20th of June, and by 2001, it became an annual worldwide celebration. So why is World Refugee Day celebrated? It is celebrated to show support of millions of families all over the world who have lost their homes and dear ones because of violence or war. Today, more than 70 million people around the world are refugees or internally displaced as a result of conflict or persecution. That is equivalent to the population of the world's 20th largest country. World Refugee Day was established by the General Assembly for refugees to honor them for their courage in facing many challenges after losing their homes and the lives that they had known due to conflict, violence, and to also bring attention to the contributions that refugees are bringing to their new communities. World Refugee Day is celebrated because it's an opportunity for all of us to help refugees worldwide to rebuild their quality of lives through different related activities. As part of their relocation to their new land, refugees have historically been provided a variety of life-saving assistance, safety and protection by the government, agencies, and organizations. At minimum, they're provided tents, shelter, live-in material supplies, and served with life-saving services for their relocation. However, the courage it takes to leave everything behind and to try to start over with basic necessities is tremendous. The goal of celebrating this day is to increase awareness among the public by sharing related refugee stories. It is celebrated to remind people about the failures of international community or home conflicts, which has forced so many families to leave their home and to go to another place to save their lives. People honor the spirit and the courage of millions of refugees worldwide on this day, and it's also a day to lift up concerns, worries, and address issues. Join Women Watch Afrika and millions all over the globe in celebrating and recognizing the courage, the strength, the resilience of refugees. Show your solidarity and take action. As at World Refugee Day 2019, an unprecedented 70.8 million people have been forcibly displaced, and 37,000 people are forced to flee their homes every day due to such conflict. In the past decade, global refugee population has more than doubled, with more than 25 million refugees living in host communities around the world. We are now at the highest population on record, with 67% of the world's refugees coming from just 5 countries. World Refugee Day commemorates the obstacles refugees face each year, but also celebrates their strength. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has started with the With Refugees hashtag petition to send a message of action, solidarity, and responsibility on behalf of refugees to governments worldwide. Together we can work to end the refugee crisis and find homes for displaced people. Here is how you can help. You can share your solidarity messages. You can post articles to Facebook and Twitter. You can post to your social media. You can talk to your neighbors and your friends. You can share information. Everyone should stand with refugees. Create a welcoming space for refugees and immigrants in your community. Give back. You can also make donations to organizations and grassroots organizations that work to serve refugees. Thank you.
National Nurses United Solidarity Statement for World Refugee Day. National Nurses United, the largest nurses union in the United States, expresses our support for World Refugee Day. Perhaps no other population experiences the devastating impact of deprivation of health care and the fragility of human life than refugee communities around the globe. This year's commemoration of World Refugee Day on June 20th marks a turning point in human history. The interconnectedness of humankind has been starkly brought to light by the COVID-19 global pandemic. People of all continents are facing this pandemic, and our fates are intertwined in a very stark and real way. Infectious diseases know no national borders. The world community is once again confronted with a clear choice. Either we work together for the common good, or we all suffer from the ravages of disease compounded by deadly racism, xenophobia, and nationalism. As registered nurses, we understand this reality and possibility in a very personal and practical way. Though the coronavirus can infect anyone, those fleeing wars, persecution, environmental degradation, and climate catastrophe are often completely excluded from necessary care and treatment and are often stuck in precarious refugee camps that are conducive for illness and viral spread. We nurses will never be silent as long as those least responsible for the crisis are forced to bear the heaviest burden. We honor the courage, strength, and determination of women, children, and men who are forced to flee their homelands under the threats of persecution, conflict, and violence. We are inspired and uplifted by the hope for a sustainable, secure, and healthy future that refugees carry in their hearts and minds. We commit to work toward that goal and to build a world community that embraces and sustains us all. Together, we will forge a brighter future through international solidarity and mutual respect and support. And from Dorian Brown Crosby, I stand with solidarity with African refugees as an African American fighting systemic racism and police brutality. I stand in solidarity with women refugees fighting sexism. I stand in solidarity with Muslim refugees as a Christian fighting Islamophobia.
Women Watch Africa's 2020 World Refugee Day solidarity message to refugees the world over. Women Watch Africa is a grassroots, nonprofit, international, national, and local social justice organization focused on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women and girls, the promotion of social and economic development, and health equity of women, and the acculturation of all immigrants and refugees, women, men, and children, arriving to the United States from 23 African nations. In line with its goal, Women Watch Africa provides social services, advocacy, health, female genital mutilation or cutting, and legal education, know your rights, workshops, citizenship preparation, legal services, civic engagement, and advocacy against unjust discriminatory laws that affect the community. Established in Atlanta in 1997 to address the unmet needs of underserved African refugees and immigrant population in Metro Atlanta, Women Watch Africa's office is based in DeKalb County that has a significant concentration of low-income underserved refugees and immigrant population and African Americans. Under the leadership of our Executive Director, Glory Kilanko, Women Watch Africa is the foremost service provider for and by Africans in Metro Atlanta. Around the world, more than 70 million people have been forced to leave their homes and are in search of safety from violence and persecution. Each day, war forces thousands of families to flee their homes. I am one of the many that was forced to leave my home. To escape the violence, we leave everything behind, including all our valuables, pictures, etc. But we bring with us great loving spirits, our hopes and our dreams for a safer future. To us, every day is World Refugee Day. The COVID-19 pandemic made a difficult situation even worse for refugees and displaced persons who are trapped in crowded spaces without access to medical care or sanitation, making them at risk of easily contracting the coronavirus. The situation is made more terrible for refugees in the United States who face additional racism in the stimulus package that was given out. Many have lost their jobs and can no longer put food on the table for their children, and they remain underinsured even amidst the pandemic, while others remain in unhealthy jailhouses. With the shelter in place order, many refugees face dangerous situations that put them at risk of domestic violence. Refugees are reminded daily of the very reasons that force them to flee their countries. As refugees, we are happy to receive welcoming messages of love. As if the predicament is not enough, the US government has issued regulatory changes that is proposed for cases involving individuals fleeing persecution in their home countries and seeking asylum in the United States. The proposed rule will be devastating to all asylum seekers and aims to eliminate gender-based asylum. We call on all peace-loving human beings to condemn this act, as this is going to make it very difficult for women who are escaping domestic violence situation from seeking safety in the United States. As we celebrate 2020 World Refugee Day, we call on you to please join Women Watch Africa in honoring the courage, strength, and determination of women, men, and children who are forced to flee their homeland under the threat of persecution, conflict, and violence. Let us put commitment to practice by supporting refugees to celebrate themselves on the only one day.
They are recording me, so please.
Let us put commitment to practice in supporting refugees to celebrate themselves on the only day that is set aside for us, Please wish us happy World Refugee Day and join in all celebrations that refugees are putting together around the world. On 4th December 2000, the United Nations General Assembly in Resolution 55/76 dedicated and decided that from 2001, June the 20th, will be celebrated as World Refugee Day. Long before then, African Refugee Day had been formally celebrated in several countries prior to the 2000. But the United Nations noted that Organizations of African Unity, OAU, had agreed to have International Refugee Day coincide with the African Refugee Day on June 20. And that gave us the birth and the history of the joint celebration of the African Day and World Refugee Day. The convention relating to the status of refugees, which is also known as the 1951 Refugee Convention, is a United Nations multilateral treaty that defines who is a refugee and sets out the rights of individuals who are granted asylum and the responsibilities of nations that grant asylum. The convention also sets out which people do not qualify as refugees, such as war criminals, who are the people who perpetrate war against individuals, and when they are defeated, they now escape to go to foreign land and continue to dominate people of that same ethnic community that they were dominating in their home countries. They are not classified as refugees. The convention also provides for some visa-free travel for holders of travel documents issued under the convention. The convention builds on Article 14 of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights that recognizes the right of persons to seek asylum from persecution in other countries. A refugee may enjoy rights and benefits in a state in addition to those provided in the convention. This was set aside since 2000. The struggle continues even in 2020. Thank you.
The Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy stands in solidarity with Women Watch Afrika and over 64 million people who have been forcibly displaced, including refugees, asylum seekers, internally displaced persons, and climate refugees. We join allies across the globe on World Refugee Day, June 20th, to acknowledge the humanity, dignity, and value of all refugees, and to celebrate their courage, resilience, and contributions in the fleeing of their homeland, and the assimilation of some place new, where they are often met with hostility and penalized through labor exploitation and criminalization. We must care about how people who are crossing the borders today are treated, as the reality of climate crisis forces more and more people to cross domestic and international borders for safety. During Hurricane Katrina 2005, over 1 million people across the Gulf Coast region were temporarily displaced. Hundreds of thousands of families never returned to their homes, the majority of them Black, brown, and poor. Displaced people and families are called refugees despite not crossing international borders. This label was meant to identify them as the other, the victim, people who are supposed to be in order to justify barriers for economic recovery, inclusive social integration, and healing required for climate disasters and climate trauma. The United Nations predicts that by 2050, there could be as many as 1 billion people displaced due to climate crisis. We stand in solidarity with refugees in the U.S. We must establish a new social attitude and see migration as a benefit, as a necessity for our global survival, not as a threat to our individual privileges. We must get ready for the realities of migration caused by the worsening climate crisis. Our collective resilience is connected to our ability to protect and advocate the human right to migrate. Key to our survival will be our ability to care for refugees. We must perfect our process on integrating migrating families as we build a democracy for all people. All people, especially refugees, deserve safe housing, healthy food, clean water, healthcare, and freedom from over-policing and exploitation of their labor, no matter who they are and where they are from. We stand with the refugee community in love and solidarity. Jennifer Clarkston, Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy.
Being a refugee is not just about internal or external displacement. When you are in a place, country, home, job, or school where you cannot live to your highest potential or climb the highest ladder of life, or you're being constantly suppressed, you're a refugee. So today, I stand with refugees all over the world. Paula Palmer, Women Watch Afrika.
We connect the work of using arts and culture to support the empowerment and transformation of communities most impacted by racism, poverty, gender inequity, criminalization, and incarceration. Kiongozi, Mapinduzi, Spirit House.
Today, on World Refugee Day, we at Alternate Roots stand with our Southern Movement Assembly partners, Women Watch Afrika, in solidarity with refugees and migrants throughout the world, and especially in our region. We acknowledge that for the past 500 years, the US South is a place where communities have been displaced from and displaced to. Beginning with the indigenous people of this land, many of whom were forced to leave their homelands, while some resisted removal and remained, often viewed as outsiders in their own lands, including Africans taken from their home continent, who after centuries of struggle and survival, enslavement and emancipation, either fled or endured the terror of the Jim Crow South and the constant threat of lynching, including migrants from the Americas and across the oceans who arrive on these lands after their home countries have been destabilized by both military and economic violence, often at the hands of US imperialism. Today, we honor the complex web of people and histories that call our region home. As an arts and activism organization, we affirm and celebrate the transformational power that comes from people deeply rooted in their art, culture, language, and foodways. We know that the South is richer for the many communities and cultures that live here. We encourage all of our members and allies who aren't already to get connected and stand in solidarity with their local refugee and migrant communities. Wendy Schenefeld, Alternate Roots.
As a Southern LGBTQ organization working at the intersections of race, class, gender, ability, and sexuality, we know that the attacks of police and state violence and patriarchal violence hits our communities with a mighty fist. We know that our lives are connected, and the solutions and remedies will come when we are connected and united. The global attacks on LGBTQ folks, in addition to the quest for imperialist domination, oftentimes leads people to migrating and seeking homes. It is our work to dismantle the forces that make home a war zone. We must protect and defend our homes and communities now more than ever, both in the US and across the diaspora. Mary Hook's Southerners on New Ground song.
Project South Institute for Elimination of Poverty and Genocide recognizes World Refugee Day on June the 20th, 2020 as a significant reminder of our global interconnectedness. We believe in growing a global social movement connected across geographies, cultures, and experiences. Project South is located in South Atlanta, an historically Black neighborhood settled by formerly enslaved people after emancipation. Black communities have been displaced from their neighborhoods in Atlanta by many of the same forces that displace refugees the world over. Militarized police, devastating poverty, exploitative development. Black families are forced to move into surrounding counties, and culture and social resources are strained and oftentimes broken. In the last few days, a young Black man, Rashard Brooks, was murdered by a police officer in our neighborhood. The fury, tension, and outrage is palpable in our streets. State violence is rooted in white supremacy and the devaluing of Black life for profit. The same root cause carves borders around the world and creates conditions that force people to flee their homes and migrate across the globe. Communities in the U.S. have much to learn from the refugee experience. The U.S. is not a safe place for refugees, immigrants, Black people, and many others. We have much work to do to create sanctuary for all people to escape the violence and harm. As displacement increases from South Atlanta to the global South, we need a social movement that recognizes people's humanity, builds infrastructure to receive and support displaced people, and practices methods that not only ensure collective survival, but generates community-based political power. Borders were built to divide us, but when community recognize and stand in solidarity with one another, we are able to protect and defend one another from no matter where we are. Project South stands in solidarity with partner Women Watch Afrika and the Southern Movement Assembly in recognition of World Refugee Day. Project South team.
We must end all forms of global injustice and defer to the rights of all living things. Today I stand with my immigrant and refugee siblings from around the world. I advocate for and provide safe haven. You are welcome here. I will listen to you, follow your lead, and work in solidarity to make sure you have all you need to live life with dignity. Chiquita Williams, Lehman College.
There is nothing more heartbreaking than having to flee the place of your birth and growth, your homeland. And every year, millions around the world are forced to do just that. So on World Refugee Day 2020, I raise awareness of the plight of refugees and lift up refugees, honoring their courage, resilience, and their contributions to their new communities and home. And it is our responsibility to include refugee issues in every conversation or program, because refugee issues cuts across education, environment, economic, political, war, crisis, or natural disaster. We have to create a welcoming space. I stand with refugees. Priye Kabam, Women Watch Afrika.